The night was quiet but not peaceful. The silence carried a weight, a cold heaviness, as if the world itself was holding its breath. The little village lay hidden under the shadow of tall cliffs, only a few lanterns burning dim at the corners of the dusty streets. In one corner, inside a small broken hut, a young girl sat alone, her eyes closed, her hands folded on her lap. She had never seen light. She had never seen the sky, and not even once had she seen the stars. She was blind since birth, and in her world darkness was the only truth. But tonight something changed. She heard the sound of footsteps. Slow but strong, a man entered the hut, not an alien like her people, but a human, tall, tired, and carrying a strange device wrapped in cloth. He looked at her quietly, his eyes filled with something the others in the village had never shown her: compassion. The girl turned her face toward the sound, her voice weak but clear. She whispered words that carried all the pain of her heart. "I've never seen the stars," she said, her lips trembling, her hands clutching the torn blanket on her knees. "I wish I could see them just once," the human froze. Her words struck his heart like a blade. He had seen many wars, many broken souls, but this small whisper, this little wish of a blind girl, broke him more than battles ever did. He stepped closer, lowering himself to her side. "Do you trust me?" he asked softly, his voice careful, as if afraid his question might shatter her even more. She tilted her head, her cloudy eyes staring into nothing, yet her face carried a strange calm. "You are human," she whispered. "People fear you. They say you bring trouble, but your voice, it does not sound cruel." For a moment silence wrapped them again, the distant cry of night birds echoing through the cliffs. The man slowly unwrapped the cloth from the device in his hands. It was small, made of silver and glass, with glowing lines running across its surface, a forbidden thing, something stolen from soldiers of the alien empire, something no one dared to use. He took a deep breath, his hands shaking. "This can give you sight," he said, his words heavy with risk. "But if I use it, they will come for me. They will never forgive this act. Do you still want it?" Her lips parted. She did not hesitate. "If it means I can see the stars," she whispered. "Then yes." The human's chest tightened. He had promised himself never to use the device again, never to bring attention, but now here she was, a girl who had never seen the world, begging only for stars, not riches, not freedom, only stars. He reached out, brushing her hair gently aside, his rough fingers trembling as they touched her skin. The girl flinched but did not pull away. She sat still, trusting, waiting. As he raised the device closer to her eyes, the room seemed to grow colder. Even the air outside felt tense. The lantern flame flickered as if afraid. "Hold still," he whispered, his voice breaking. The device hummed. A soft vibration filled the room. The girl's body tensed as warmth touched her eyes. She gasped, clutching the human's arm, pain and light mixing together. Her breath quickened, her heart racing. Darkness that had been her prison all her life began to crack. Faint colors, faint lines, shadows of shapes began to leak into her world. She cried out, tears streaming down her cheeks. I can see something," she whispered, her voice full of fear and wonder, her hands shaking as if afraid the moment might vanish. The human smiled faintly, though his eyes carried sorrow. He knew the cost of this act. He knew the soldiers would sense the stolen device had been used. He knew they would come for him soon, but at that moment, her tears of joy mattered more than his fear. The girl blinked again. The blurred outline of the man's face appeared before her, rough, scarred, tired but kind. She lifted her hand and touched his cheek. You are real," she whispered. Her smile weak but pure, and then she gasped, her new eyes catching a glimpse through the broken roof of the hut. There above the cliffs, a single star shimmered in the night. Her lips trembled. "It's beautiful," she breathed. The human turned his face away, hiding the ache in his chest. For her, this was the first star, but for him it was the beginning of the end. Already in the distance, faint echoes of marching boots could be heard. Soldiers moving, the Empire would not forgive. The night that began with a whisper in the dark had changed everything. A blind girl saw the stars, and a human broke the law of an empire. Together their fates were sealed, and danger was already on its way. The world inside the broken hut was silent after her first star. Silence heavy with awe, the girl sat frozen, her small hands pressed to her chest, her heart racing faster than ever before. She blinked again and again, afraid the light would vanish, afraid it was only a dream. The human sat before her, watching her carefully. His eyes shadowed with both relief and fear. He whispered, "It will take time. Your eyes are learning." His voice was gentle, Yet behind his words there was a storm. He knew every second was dangerous. Every beat of the device was calling soldiers closer. The girl turned her gaze toward him, her vision blurry, shapes bending like smoke. But for the first time she could trace the outline of a face. She could see the curve of his jaw, the lines carved by years of battle and the eyes that carried sorrow. She gasped, lifting her trembling hand, her fingertips brushing his cheek. You are real, not just a voice, she whispered. Tears shining, he lowered his head, unable to meet her eyes. Too real, he muttered. Real enough to be hunted, but he didn't let her hear the fear inside. Instead, he steadied her hands. Try to look again, try to see the light. Follow it. She obeyed, lifting her gaze upward through the cracked roof. The single star above the cliffs glimmered faintly, like a tiny fire. Her breath caught in her throat. So small, she whispered, but it feels endless. The human smiled faintly, the sound of her wonder like balm to his weary soul. There are millions of them, he said. An ocean of light, each one a world, a sun, a dream. Her lips parted, her tears falling freely. I want to see them all, she whispered. I want to see every star. His heart tightened. He wanted to tell her she would. He wanted to promise her the galaxy. But promises were dangerous, he only nodded. You will. If we survive tonight. She turned sharply at his words, her vision catching the faint flicker of movement beyond the doorway. Shadows sliding past the lantern light. She frowned, her voice trembling. There are others outside? The human stiffened, his hand instinctively going to the hidden blade at his belt. He listened. The sound of gravel shifting under boots, low voices whispering in a language of soldiers. His jaw clenched. They're here already, he whispered. Faster than I thought, fear stabbed through her. But this time she did not collapse into darkness. This time she looked at him, her weak voice steady. You gave me sight, she whispered. I will not let them take you. He shook his head quickly, his hand gripping her shoulder. No, you stay quiet if they find me. You must say nothing. Close your eyes, pretend you never saw light. Promise me. Her hands shook, but she nodded slowly, though her heart screamed against the words. The hut door creaked. Boots stomped outside. Harsh voices barked orders. The sound of metal scraping stone. The human pushed her gently toward the corner. Hiding her behind torn blankets, he whispered. Stay still. Whatever happens. The girl clutched the blanket. Her new sight foggy, but enough to see the glow of torches outside. The outline of armored soldiers moving in the night, their shadows tall and cruel against the cracked walls. The human stood alone in the middle of the hut, his shoulders broad, his back straight. The device hidden quickly under his coat, his eyes sharp. The door burst open. 2 soldiers stepped inside, their armor black, their helmets glowing faint red, their weapons humming with energy. One soldier sneered. Human, his voice metallic, cold. We know what you carry. The human did not move. His voice calm. I carry nothing, he said. The second soldier stepped closer, his torch sweeping the room. The light fell on the blind girl in the corner. Her heart pounded, but she forced her eyes shut, pretending darkness still ruled her. Her lips trembled, but she said nothing. The soldier's torch hovered on her face. This one. She looked strange, he muttered, leaning closer. Her body shook, but she did not open her eyes. The human stepped forward sharply, blocking the view. Leave her, his voice hard like stone. She is nothing, only a cripple. Worthless to you. The soldiers exchanged looks. One smirked. Perhaps worthless, perhaps not. His eyes narrowed. But you, human, are never worthless prey. The Empire wants you alive. The girl's breath hitched. Fear choking her, she wanted to open her eyes. To see, to fight, but she remembered his words. She held herself still, tears running silently down her cheeks. The human's hand brushed the blade at his belt, his mind racing. He could kill them, but more would come, or he could run, but where? His eyes flicked to the girl, just for a moment. And in that moment, his heart decided. He took a slow breath, his voice calm. If the Empire wants me, he said, they'll have to earn me. The soldiers laughed darkly, their weapons lifting, but in the girl's chest something burned, something fierce and new. For the first time she saw light, for the first time she saw danger, and for the first time she wanted to fight against it. The night outside was no longer silent. Torches burned, boots marched, the hunt had begun. And inside the hut, a blind girl with new eyes and a human with a broken past prepared to face the storm. The night was no longer silent outside the broken hut. The sound of marching boots grew louder, echoing through the narrow streets, every step heavy, every voice sharp. The soldiers of the Empire had arrived in full force. The blind girl, now seeing with new but fragile eyes, crouched in the corner, her chest tight with fear. She pressed her hands to her mouth to stop any sound, yet her heart beat so loudly she feared the soldiers might hear it. The human stood near the door, his body tense, his mind racing. He had fought battles before, but this was different. Here there was no army at his side, no weapons of war, only a girl who had just seen her first star, and his will to protect her. Outside, the commander's voice rang out, cold and cruel. Search every house. Leave no shadow unchecked. The human is here. He has used forbidden technology. The device must be found. Torches lit the village, their flames flickering against the walls. Shadows danced across the windows. The soldiers moved in squads, banging on doors, dragging frightened villagers out into the streets. Inside the hut, the girl whispered, her voice shaking, "They will find us." Her eyes wide, still blurry but now full of terror. The human crouched beside her, placing a rough hand on her shoulder. "Listen to me," he said firmly. "Fear makes noise, and noise will kill us. Breathe slow, trust me." She tried to obey, inhaling shakily, exhaling with trembling lips, her hands still clutching the torn blanket. Her eyes flicked toward the broken roof. Where faint starlight spilled in, she whispered, "The stars. They are watching us." He almost smiled. Even in fear she found hope, but the smile faded quickly. Outside, the boots drew nearer, closer, stopping right in front of the hut. A soldier's fist pounded on the door, wood rattling under the strike. "Open!" the soldier barked. "By order of the Empire." The girl flinched, but the human stood tall, his voice calm, though his veins burned with tension. "This house holds nothing," he called out. "Move on," the soldiers outside laughed. Harsh and cruel. "Humans lie," one hissed. "Tear it down if you must. Find him." The door swung open violently. Soldiers poured in, their armor black, their helmets glowing with red slits, weapons ready. The torchlight filled the room with fire-like glow. The girl buried her face in the blanket, squeezing her eyes shut, remembering his warning. She whispered to herself, "Darkness, I am still blind. I am still blind," over and over. One soldier's torchlight landed on her, his voice curious. This one, strange eyes, could be the one he healed. He stepped closer. The human stepped forward immediately, blocking the soldier's view, his shoulders broad, his presence like a wall. "She is blind," he growled. "Look at her. She cannot even meet your gaze." The soldier paused. The girl kept her eyes squeezed tight, her body trembling, tears slipping down her cheeks. The soldier finally spat on the floor. "Worthless. Just another cripple." He turned away. But the commander entered next. Taller than the others, his armor heavier, a scar running down his cheek. His eyes burned with suspicion. He scanned the room slowly, his voice low but sharp. "I can smell rebellion here." His gaze locked on the human, his lip curling. "You, human," he said. "You are poison to this village. Wherever you walk, hope rises. And the Empire crushes hope." The human did not answer, his jaw tight, his hand brushing the hidden blade at his belt. The commander smirked, stepping closer, his boots thudding on the floor. "Surrender now," he said coldly, "and perhaps we let the village live. Resist, and we burn every stone, every soul, until nothing remains." The girl's breath caught, her body shaking. She wanted to cry out, to beg them to stop, but the human turned his head slightly, his eyes meeting hers for just a moment, a silent message. "Stay quiet. Trust me." She bit her lip hard, forcing her tears back. The soldiers began overturning the room, throwing broken pots, tearing the blankets, smashing the table, searching for the forbidden device. The human's hand pressed against his coat where the device was hidden, his heart pounding. If they found it, everything was lost. Suddenly, a soldier shouted from outside, "Tracks! Human tracks leading toward the cliffs." The commander's head snapped toward the door, his eyes narrowing. "So he runs," he sneered. "Fool." He turned back to the human in the hut. "Stay if you dare. We will find you soon enough." He barked an order, and most of the soldiers stormed out, following the false trail. Only 2 soldiers remained in the hut, their eyes locked on the human, their weapons humming dangerously. The girl trembled, but then, for the first time, her eyes opened slightly, just enough to see them clearly. The soldiers, the weapons, the danger. She whispered softly to herself, I can see. I can see." Her fear shifting into something else. The human caught her whisper, his eyes widened slightly, and in that instant he knew. Her vision was no longer just a miracle. It could be their weapon, but before he could move, one of the soldiers stepped closer, his weapon raised. "Orders," he said coldly. "If he resists, Kill him! The human's muscles tensed. His hand gripping the blade, the girl's eyes widened, her vision catching every detail. The soldier's finger tightening on the trigger, the glow of the weapon charging. Her heart screamed. Her voice burst out, "No!" The soldier spun, shocked that the blind girl spoke with such force. In that single cry, the truth was revealed. She was no longer blind. The room froze, silence heavy. Then the commander's voice echoed from outside, sharp and cruel. "So it is true." The human's jaw tightened. He grabbed the girl's arm, pulling her close. "Run," he whispered fiercely. "Run now." And as the soldiers raised their weapons, the sound of boots multiplied outside. Filling the streets, the hunt was no longer a secret. The soldiers' footsteps thundered like a storm. The girl and the human burst into the night. Torches blazing, alarms ringing. The entire village caught in the fire of pursuit. The night exploded with noise. The village that had been silent minutes ago now shook with the thunder of boots and the blaze of torches. Soldiers shouted orders, their metallic voices cutting through the darkness. The human held the girl's hand tightly, pulling her into the narrow street. Her feet stumbled, but her eyes, still learning, still fragile, followed the flicker of firelight, every shape new, every shadow sharp. Fear and wonder mixed inside her. "Stay close," he whispered, his voice hard, his grip strong. "Do not let go. No matter what happens." Behind them, soldiers roared, "There! Catch them!" Weapons fired. Bolts of red light struck the walls. Stone shattered, sparks flew. Villagers screamed as they hid in their homes. The girl's heart pounded. She had never run like this before. She had never even seen the ground she walked on. Now every step was a battle between falling and flying. "I cannot," she gasped, but the human pulled her forward. His voice sharp. "You can, trust your eyes." "Trust me." She forced herself to look down, to follow his steps, the dirt road, the scattered stones, the broken fences. All blurred but visible. She stumbled once, twice, but each time his arm steadied her. They darted into an alley, shadows wrapping around them. The girl pressed against the wall, her breath ragged. She looked at him, her new eyes wide. "Why do they want you so badly?" she whispered. His face was grim, sweat dripping. "Because I stole their secret," he said, his coat shifting, the faint glow of the forbidden device hidden inside. "Because I gave you what they never wanted you to have. Sight. Freedom." Her lips trembled. She understood now. It was not only her life in danger, it was his. His crime was kindness, and the Empire did not forgive kindness. The sound of boots grew closer. The glow of torches flickered at the mouth of the alley. The human grabbed her hand again. "This way," he whispered, dragging her toward the old market. The marketplace lay abandoned, stalls broken, cloth covers torn and hanging like ghosts. The smell of old spices still clinging to the air. They darted between the stalls, crouching low, but a soldier's voice rang out behind them. "Stop! Human filth!" A blast of energy struck a wooden cart. It exploded into fire. Debris rained down. The girl screamed. Clutching his arm, he pulled her into the smoke, coughing but never slowing. They reached the far end of the market, only to find soldiers blocking the street, their weapons raised, torches blazing. The girl froze, terror gripping her. "We are trapped," she whispered. The human's eyes darted, scanning. Above them, ropes still hung between the stalls. Old trader lines. He leapt onto a broken crate. Grabbing the rope, "Climb," he ordered, pulling her up with him. Her eyes widened in panic. "I cannot," she gasped. "I will fall." He looked at her firmly. "You saw the stars, didn't you? Then you can do this. Trust yourself." Her body shook, but she nodded, gripping the rope, her weak arms pulling, her feet slipping. But the human's strength lifted her higher, until they reached the top of the stalls, balancing on the wooden beams. Below them, soldiers fired, beams of light slicing through the night. Wood splintered, flames spreading. Villagers screamed in the distance. The girl wobbled, her new vision dizzying. She whispered, "Everything moves, everything shines." "I cannot hold steady." The human steadied her with his arm, guiding her across the beams, his voice low but steady. "One step at a time, do not look down, look at me." She fixed her gaze on him, his broad back leading her forward. The noise below fading into a blur. Step by step they crossed until they leapt down into another alley, landing hard but alive. Her knees scraped, blood trickled, but she smiled faintly through tears. "I did it," she whispered, amazement in her voice. He gave her a brief nod. "You did." Then his eyes sharpened. The sound of boots thundered again. More soldiers pouring into the streets, the commander's voice rising above them all. "Do not let them escape. The human dies tonight." The girl's chest tightened. She whispered, They will never stop. The human's jaw tightened. Then neither will we. He pulled her toward the cliffs at the edge of the village, their shadows racing ahead of the torchlight. Behind them, the entire Empire's hunt closing in. But as they neared the cliffs, a net of soldiers appeared ahead, blocking the path, armored figures, weapons glowing, their formation tight. The girl froze again, panic choking her. "No way out," she whispered, tears welling. The human's eyes scanned quickly, then locked onto a narrow crack between the rocks, half hidden by shadow. "There," he said, pointing. "A way into the cliffs. If we reach it, we can hide." The soldiers raised their weapons.
Aiming, the commander stepped forward,
His voice cold as stone. "Give yourself up, human. And perhaps the girl will live." The human stepped in front of her, shielding her with his body, his voice a growl. "Over my dead body," the commander smirked. "As you wish." Blasts of energy lit the night, fire and smoke filled the air. The human shoved the girl toward the crack in the rocks, shouting, "Run, now!" She stumbled, her eyes wide, her body shaking, but she obeyed, squeezing into the darkness of the cliff, her voice crying out, "Don't leave me." The human turned, his blade flashing in the torchlight, facing the soldiers head-on, his roar echoing through the night. The chase had begun, but the fight was far from over. The cliff swallowed them. The night outside filled with fire and shouts. The girl pressed herself against the cold stone, her breath sharp, her hands scraping the rough walls as she crawled deeper into the narrow crack. The sound of the human's footsteps closed behind her. The passage twisted like a throat. Narrow and suffocating, every scrape of rock echoed loud. The girl's new eyes strained in the dark, but faint light glowed ahead, a soft shimmer that called them forward. When they emerged, her lips parted in awe. The cave opened wide like a hidden cathedral, the ceiling high, glittering crystals embedded in the rock. Their glow soft and blue like stars buried in stone, she gasped, her voice trembling. "It's like the sky, but underground." The human stood beside her, his chest rising and falling with exhaustion, his eyes scanning every corner, his soldier's instincts never resting. But when he saw her face lit by crystal light, he felt the weight on his shoulders grow heavier. He had given her sight, but at what cost? The girl stepped forward slowly, her hand brushing the glowing wall, her tears shining. "I can see everything. Even in the dark," she whispered, wonder in her voice. "I was blind, and now it feels like magic." The human lowered himself onto a rock, his hand pressing against his coat where the forbidden device still pulsed faintly. "It is not magic," he said quietly. "It is stolen power. Power that was never meant to reach your hands." She turned sharply, her eyes wide. "Why?" His jaw tightened, his voice bitter. "Because the Empire rules through blindness. Through chains, they keep you in the dark so you never dream, never hope, never fight back." He looked at her, his voice heavy. "I broke their law when I gave you sight, and for that they will not stop until I am dead." The girl's throat tightened, her new eyes stung with tears. She stepped closer, placing her hand on his. "Then we will run. We will hide," she whispered. "You saved me. I will save you." He looked at her hand on his, her skin glowing faint in the crystal light. Fragile but determined, his chest ached. No one had ever spoken of saving him before, not in all the years of war and loss. But before he could answer, a faint sound reached them. The scrape of metal against stone, the echo of boots. His head snapped up, his voice a whisper sharp as a blade. "They're here." The girl stiffened, her heart pounding. She could hear it too now, the faint clink of armor, the hiss of a torch flame. Soldiers had tracked them, the Empire's shadow crawling into the cave. The human stood, drawing his blade, his eyes narrowing. "Stay behind me," he ordered, his body tense, ready to fight. But the girl shook her head, her eyes fierce. "No, I will not hide, not anymore. I have eyes now. I will use them." He turned to her, his jaw set. "You can barely stand without stumbling," he hissed. "This is not your fight." Her voice broke but did not falter. "It is my fight, because without you I would still be in darkness. If they take you, they take my stars away." The words struck him deep. Heavier than any wound, his chest burned, but there was no time. Shadows moved at the mouth of the cave, red light glowing from soldiers' helmets. The human pulled her quickly into a side passage, crouching low, his voice low but fierce. "Listen, this cave twists like a maze. There are paths only a child could fit through. You must learn them now, remember them. If I fall, you keep running." Her tears slipped, but she nodded, repeating, "If you fall, I keep running," though her heart screamed against it. The soldiers' voices grew louder. "He is here. The human is here. Weapons hummed, the glow of energy cutting into the shadows. The human gripped his blade tighter, his other hand brushing the device in his coat. His mind torn, he could fight, he could flee, or he could use the forbidden power again. But each choice carried death. The girl suddenly tugged his arm, her voice urgent. This way I saw it, a narrow tunnel, small but hidden. Come. She led him through a gap barely wide enough for her frame, the rocks scraping their shoulders. The human grunted as his back scraped, but he followed, trusting her new eyes. They stumbled into another chamber, smaller, but with a pool of glowing water at its center. The girl knelt beside it, her reflection shining back at her. She touched her face, tears falling. This is the first time I see myself, she whispered. Voice breaking, the human turned away, his heart heavy. He could not let her lose this gift. Not now, but outside, the soldiers were closing in, their commander's voice echoing through the cave. Do not waste time, burn it if you must, drag him out. The girl turned to the human, her voice trembling but strong. We cannot run forever, can we? He met her gaze, his scarred face illuminated by crystal glow. His silence was her answer. She stepped closer, gripping his hand tight. Then we fight together. The sound of boots grew louder. Torches blazed, weapons hummed. The Empire's shadow filled the cave. The girl and the human stood side by side, fragile and strong, blind no longer, waiting for the storm to break. The cave trembled with echoes. Boots slammed against the stone. Voices barked cruel orders. The air grew thick with smoke as soldiers lit their torches, the glow turning the crystal walls into fire. The human stood tall, blade in hand, his eyes locked on the shadows moving closer. Every muscle in his body tensed. His scars burned as if remembering every battle he had fought. Yet this moment felt heavier, because now he was not fighting for himself alone. The girl stood beside him, her hands shaking but her eyes burning with new strength. She had seen darkness all her life, but tonight she had seen stars. Tonight she had seen her own reflection, and she refused to return to blindness. You must hide, the human whispered, his voice low, his eyes never leaving the cave mouth. This fight is mine. But she shook her head, her tears shining in the crystal light. No, if you fall, I fall too, she said firmly. I will not live in light if you are gone. His heart clenched, her words like chains of both love and fear. But before he could answer, soldiers stormed into the chamber, their armor glowing red, their weapons raised, the commander's voice echoing like thunder. Take him alive. Kill the girl if she resists, the girl's breath caught. Her body trembled, but then she did something the human did not expect. She stepped forward, her eyes wide and glowing with reflected crystal light. She shouted with a voice louder than she thought she had. I was blind, you left me to rot in darkness. And he gave me sight. If you kill him, you kill hope itself. The soldiers hesitated, only for a heartbeat, then sneered. Hope cannot stop the Empire, one barked. Raising his weapon, that was enough, the human roared, his blade flashing, steel clashing against metal armor, sparks flying, the cave filled with the sound of battle. He moved like a storm, his strikes fierce, every blow carrying years of rage. One soldier fell, another stumbled back, but more poured in, their weapons firing, bolts of red light slicing the air. The girl ducked, stones exploding around her. But she refused to cower. She grabbed a shard of crystal from the ground, sharp and glowing, her hands trembling. She swung it wildly at a soldier who lunged at her. The shard cut across his armor, sparks burst. The soldier stumbled back in shock. Her chest heaved, her eyes wide. She whispered to herself, I can fight. I can fight. The human saw her, his heart swelling with both pride and fear. Stay behind me, he shouted, blocking another strike. His blade sliding against a soldier's weapon, the clash echoing like thunder. But the commander stepped forward now, his presence like a shadow heavier than the rest. His voice sharp. You cannot win, human. You are only one man. The human spat blood, his blade dripping. One man is enough, he growled. They clashed, steel against steel, sparks lighting the cave like lightning. The commander stronger, heavier, but the human faster, his strikes fueled by desperation. The girl cried out as she saw blood run down the human's arm. A soldier's blade cutting him, her heart screamed, no. She hurled the crystal shard with all her strength. It struck the soldier's helmet. Cracking the glow, he fell back with a snarl. The commander laughed darkly. So the little blind rat has teeth, he sneered, his weapon raised for a killing blow. The human staggered, but then something inside him lit like fire. He roared and slammed his blade upward, blocking the commander's strike. Their weapons locked, sparks flying, their faces inches apart. "You cannot stop the Empire," the commander hissed. "But I can stop you," the human growled, pushing with all his might, their blades scraping, the sound like thunder. The girl rushed forward, ignoring fear, ignoring pain. She grabbed another shard of crystal, stabbing it into the commander's leg. He howled in fury, staggering. The human seized the moment, his blade cutting across the commander's chest, sparks exploding as armor cracked. The soldiers froze, their leader stumbling, blood dark against his armor. The human breathing hard, his blade trembling but still raised. The girl stood beside him, her hands bloody, her chest heaving, but her eyes fierce. "We are not afraid," she shouted, her voice echoing through the cave. "Not anymore." The soldiers looked at each other, hesitation flickering, fear creeping where obedience once ruled. The commander snarled, clutching his wound. "Kill them!" he barked. But before the soldiers could move, a distant rumble shook the cave, stones cracking, crystals shattering. The battle had weakened the walls, the cave itself roared as if alive. Rocks fell, dust clouded the air. The human grabbed the girl, pulling her close. "Run!" he shouted, dragging her toward the far tunnel. Behind them, the soldiers scrambled, some crushed under falling stone, others retreating in panic. The commander's voice echoed one last time, furious and broken. "You cannot run forever, human. The Empire will find you." The cave collapsed behind them, sealing the chamber. Silence swallowed the roar. The human and the girl stumbled into a narrow passage, their breaths ragged, their bodies bruised but alive. The girl clung to his arm, tears on her cheeks. "You fought them all," she whispered, her voice trembling with awe. "You faced them without fear." He looked down at her, his eyes tired but burning with fire. "Fear never leaves," he said quietly. "But standing anyway, that is what makes us free." And as they pressed deeper into the darkness, the cave behind them buried in stone, they knew the Empire would not stop, but neither would they. For tonight they had stood against fear and survived. The night was quiet again, but not peaceful. The ruins of the battle still echoed in their bodies, their clothes torn, their faces bruised, the cave behind them sealed in stone. Yet the fire of survival burned in their hearts. The human leaned against the cliff wall, his blade broken, his arm bleeding. Every breath heavy, the girl knelt beside him, her new eyes shining in the faint moonlight, her hands trembling as she tried to wrap cloth around his wound. "You should not have fought for me," she whispered, her voice thick with tears. "They wanted you, not me. Now you bleed because of me." He looked at her, his face scarred, his eyes tired but soft. "No," he said quietly, "I fought because of hope. And you are that hope." Her throat tightened. Tears spilled freely. She pressed her forehead to his shoulder. "I was blind, worthless in their eyes. No one ever cared until you gave me more than sight. You gave me a reason to live." His hand rose weakly, resting on her hair. "And you gave me something too," he whispered. "A reason to keep fighting." For a long moment they stayed like that. Silence broken only by the wind, then the girl lifted her head. Her eyes turned upward and her breath caught. Above them the sky stretched wide, endless and alive, a sea of stars glittering, brighter than she had ever imagined, millions upon millions filling the night like a song. Her lips trembled, her heart raced. She pointed upward, her voice breaking. "Look. The stars, all of them, I can see them, every single one." The human followed her gaze. Though he had seen the sky 1,000 times before, tonight it felt new because he was seeing it through her eyes. Her wonder made the stars brighter. Her joy made the night alive. She gripped his hand tightly, her tears falling but her smile pure. "You gave me the universe," she whispered. "How can I ever repay you?" He squeezed her hand weakly, a faint smile on his lips. "Live," he said simply. "Live and never let them take your light again." The girl wiped her tears, determination rising in her chest. "Then I will live, not in fear, not in silence. I will fight for others like me. Those who are still blind, those who are still in chains." The human's heart swelled, her words like fire in the cold night. He saw not just a girl who had been blind, but a leader, a spark that could ignite 1,000 souls. But then the sound of distant horns broke the stillness. Faint but sharp, the Empire was not finished. More soldiers would come. The hunt was not over. The girl looked at him, her face pale. "They will never stop." "Will they?" He shook his head slowly, his eyes steady. "No. But neither will we." They rose together, weak but unbroken, hand in hand. They climbed the rocky slope, step by step until they reached the highest cliff, the wind whipping around them, the stars blazing above. The girl stood at the edge, her eyes wide, her hair glowing in the starlight. For the first time in her life, she saw the world below. The village, the mountains, the rivers, the endless sky, she gasped, her heart overflowing. It is more beautiful than I ever dreamed. The human watched her, his chest aching with both pride and sorrow. Do you see now why they fear you? He asked softly. Because once you see the stars, you will never bow to darkness again. Her lips parted, her voice firm. Then let them fear, let them chase, I will not hide. I will not kneel, she turned to him, her hand gripping his tightly. You gave me stars. I will give you forever. His eyes softened. Though pain still burned in his body, he nodded. Together then, together they stood on the cliff, the galaxy above them, the empire behind them, the future uncertain but alive. The girl whispered one last time, her voice carried by the wind. The stars they tried to hide from me, now I share them with you, and with all who dare to dream. And in that moment, under the endless sky, a blind girl who once lived in darkness and a human who defied an empire shared something greater than fear, greater than chains, greater than death itself. They shared the stars, and the galaxy would never forget it.